So welcome everyone today to our webinar on service design for Scottish local government, which is part of the Digital Office's Digital Transformation Capabilities project. I'm Siobhan from the Digital Office, and today we are joined by Stephen Kyle, Changing for the Future Programme Manager from Dundee City Council. And he'll take us through his presentation today, which will last around 30 minutes, and we will follow up with a question and answer session, which you can join in later on. So throughout the presentation, we do encourage you to use the chat box throughout, and any questions that you do want to ask Stephen will be picked up during the Q&A session afterwards. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Stephen.
Hi there, thank you very much for that, Siobhan, and thank you everybody for joining me today on this webinar to hear about the work we've been doing with service design alongside the Digital Office. I think first of all, it's probably worthwhile mentioning the reason why we're discussing this today with the Digital Office is due to the fact that we run a project through the Digital Office, which is entitled the Digital Transformation Capabilities Project. One part of that is related to service design, but I'll discuss the other parts of that later on in the webinar. But because of service design is one of the methodologies for transformation that's quite new, and this gaining a lot more interest in Scotland, that it's worthwhile having this webinar today as a form of introduction to service design. But as we go through, you'll no doubt have other questions in more detail. We're only here for half an hour, but please do ask questions for the end, and we can answer those, and there will be opportunities for you to engage further on this topic through a number of other events coming up soon. So you know, this is really an introduction for you, but we're happy to continue the conversation offline after this. But today's presentation is going to go through a few pieces. First of all, there will be some people that are listening at what service design is, but hopefully there's a number of people that are new to service design that we can explain a little bit about what that actually is, what service design is, what the Scottish approach to service design is, and where that came about from. What does good service design look like? There'll be a number of places I can signpost you to for further reading and homework after this webinar. A little bit about what service design tools look like, just to give you a feel of how service design looks compared to other things. Then I'll discuss a little bit around the Digital Office project and the playbook of tools and methods that we're looking to develop, and also then how service design fits in with other methodologies and tools available. And what's next will give you a little bit of information, some of the things that are coming up that you might want to engage with if you're interested in taking and building your knowledge on service design further. So I think first thing to cover off for those of you who are not familiar is, you know, what is service design? There's a lot of talk about it, a conversation around what it does, what it means to you. Ultimately, you know, too often when we start projects of any kind, small or large, within the public sector, we often arrive thinking that we already know what that problem definition is. What you see in front of you here is, which we'll get to explain shortly, but is the double diamond, which was developed by the Design Council. And essentially it's a reminder to us that actually there is more than just a problem definition. There's actually work that needs to be done before that stage to understand the problem, and it's a bit of an explanation as to how you work through from problem right the way through to solution. But it's very easy to forget about that first diamond, which is about understanding the problem and defining why it is that you're actually picking up a project in the first place. Often we arrive at that predefined. Usually that takes in the form of a meeting or an opinion from somebody else, that we've identified an issue. We already know what that is. We absolutely know it. Hands down, that is what we need to be solving. And it can sometimes be from user feedback, of course, as well. But as a question this then asks is that the whole problem, or is it just part of the problem? You know, if we have one piece of feedback and we solve that one problem, we're not necessarily solving the problem for everybody. We're maybe not even solving the whole problem for that one individual. Worse than starting any project or change initiative, worse than starting from a no assumed problem is actually starting with a solution already defined in your head, which again is in the public sector we have been historically quite good at as well. We think we know the problem, and therefore we also agree behind closed doors or with a small group of people that we already understand and know what the solution is. But if we skip the entire double diamond process completely and assume that we know that already, we really haven't taken any time to really understand the problem. We haven't thought about it from any other angle other than our own assumptions. And what the double diamond process actually is there to do is to remind us to focus on the problem. There's this whole big piece that needs to be done before you even jump in with that definition of what it is that your project is there to do. And I certainly don't want to be starting at the end of that process with the solution, because there's a lot of effort that needs to be going in before that. Actually, the double diamond process, of discover, define, develop, and deliver, you can see it's an iterative process. It's something that we need to take that problem and we need to start unpacking it. We need to explore, explore the problem as we know it, and explore and speak to people, understand how actually people interact with the service, what issues they have. We can come up with ideas on how we might solve that problem. We can reflect on how it all works and how this new way might work, and then we can ultimately move towards implementing that. And as you can see, we're going to go back and forth throughout that process. It's not just a black and white. Here's the problem, here's the solution, move on. This has got something that we will be in iterations. We need to go back and forth and sense check it, and actually go back to the user who's going to be using that and ask, is this going to work for you? I think that's fundamental to the concept of service design, is understanding the reality of the process, not just the planned process as we've spelt it out before. We need to understand what is really happening in that process. It's been designed one way, but actually, do we know what the citizen, what the customer's actually experience of that process is? Have we asked them what is going on for them? Have we mapped it out, having modelled what's going on, and actually visualised that and looked at the whole process rather than a part of the process? Once we've done that, we've understood that, then we can discuss how it could be, how could it be better, and ultimately there's a big piece up there at the end as to, does it actually work? So it's a sense check. It's actually going back in a loop and saying, does this work for you? Do we need to change anything? Are we along the right lines here? Very often when we're looking at problems, we do think of the backstage, the internal process. Is it working for us? Is it as efficient as it can be? Does it make sense with our current structures and our models that we've got in place? But service design is a reminder that we need to be also thinking about the front of stage of any process, the customer, the citizen's viewpoint. How does it actually feel from somebody who's using that service, not just from the person who has designed the service, who is processing that service behind the scenes? We don't want to focus only on the front of house or the back of house. It's about both of them. They've got to work for the organization, but it's also got to work for the customer. So ultimately, that's probably one of the most important parts in service design, is involving people in that, putting your citizen engagement at the heart of what you're doing. Because if we haven't actually built the service on need, then there's going to be issues. Very often we have built services on need. We have designed these services for a reason. They're not designed or created for absolutely no reason at all. Sometimes they are based on our own personal needs, but a lot of services that public service sectors organizations deliver are for the needs of the citizen and for the customer. But how long ago was that? Is it still the right process? Is it still engaging citizens now, or was it designed 10 years ago and changed slightly over time, does it actually still deliver on what citizens need it to deliver these days? A reminder of that is obviously one of the methods that we do review our processes over time is this continuous improvement cycle. You know, we spend a lot of time continually building on our processes, you know, identifying opportunities in that process workflow, planning how we can improve in it, executing it, and then reviewing it again. And that's a process of making small changes to improve. But what if the entire process is no longer working? You know, if we're continuing to make small changes and adjustments to existing processes, that's fine if it's working mostly and we need to make small changes. But actually, what if that is entirely not working for the citizen? Can we continuously improve something that is seriously broken? Service design really does help us to redesign that process entirely. It takes us back to the start and asks the questions as to whether or not it's working properly. It's looking at that insight and that engagement, and it's testing and retesting until you've got that iteration that is working for all. Another quite visual way of thinking about service design, I quite like this particular metaphor. You know, continuous improvement, or you know, is like that UX wrench on the left. It's making small, slight adjustments to improve on the process to better satisfaction, slightly better KPIs and results. But as you say, if we need to completely redesign it, we don't want to use a wrench. We want to use a chainsaw to absolutely cut down the obstacles, cut down the issues, the cultural problems, the barriers, and really rebuild something entirely different rather than something that you've tweaked and changed. One methodology is not going to solve everything. It's not always about putting the service design chainsaw through every process. There will be times when we need to use other tools and methods, and continuous improvement is absolutely necessary, and sometimes service design will be more useful. But we'll talk about the digital office playbook. I'll explain a little bit more about how these various different tools can fit together, if you like. So that's a kind of my slant on what service design actually is. There's a lot more detail in that, and there's a lot more that we could talk about when we're not talking just for half an hour. And there's a lot more examples that we could go through. But it is ultimately about the customer, about the citizen, and really walking from the start, understanding that problem before we start solutionizing, and we need to actually understand if this solution that we're developing is actually right for the people that are going to be using the service. So what is the Scottish approach to service design? Well, the Scottish approach is a really interesting idea and concept, which is quite unique to a lot of countries in that actually we're quite a small country in Scotland, and we've got a local government which is really engaged in the idea of designing services in a consistent way for the benefit of our citizens. The aim ultimately is about delivering a consistent approach. There's a number of different ways and tools and methods that you can approach service design, and what the Scottish Government are on a path of doing with the Scottish approach is understanding how we can co-design these principles, the tools and methods then to something that we're consistent in using, that we've got service standards and we've got delivery standards and we've got clear, concise tools and methods that everybody understands and uses across Scotland, but also about building capacity through training and mentoring opportunities, so that we've actually got people who understand and can apply service design across the whole organisation, across the whole of the country, because we're all delivering services to citizens. Very often our citizens are having to access multiple services from multiple different agencies. So it's all very well and good one particular service being really good at designing that service. If the next one down the line is very poorly designed, then the citizen's going to run into difficulty. Because unfortunately, very rarely our citizen journeys interacting with the public sector, rarely are they this straightforward. somebody doesn't come with a small problem to organisation one and it flows all the way through 3 or 4 organisations quickly, efficiently, and with a desirable and happy ending at the end of it. It's not always the case. And in fact, very often when you're dealing with public sector issues, it can be a lot more complicated. The citizen journeys tend to be much more looking like this. I'm sure this will not be overly out of place in most places. There's back and forth, there's to and fro, there's confusion, frustration, and sometimes the journey doesn't necessarily always end in a happy ending. There's not everything is resolved. This is a good example of that Scottish approach, how actually if organisation one are brilliant at designing their services, and as soon as they pass it over to organisation 4, the citizen has to go right back to square one again, explaining the problem and coming up with barriers and getting past pillar to post. Then actually what was the purpose of designing organisation 1 really well if the other 3 organisations that they're dealing with are not designed in a similar way? Because we're going to get to issues, and actually it's not about the whole journey then, is it? It's only just you're designing the journey through one organisation, but a citizen has to travel through all of that. So it's about thinking about the full service, the full journey of a customer and a citizen when they're dealing with the public sector, not just your one individual part of that. Because we're really, really good at silos, obscurity, hierarchies, outcomes-based tasks. We've been built up like that. We've been built to work very often, not only in silos of our own organisation, but silos within those organisations as well. And in order to build a consistent approach for customers, we need to break those down, because we don't want citizens to be really explaining themselves every time that they've moved from one department or one person to the next. Messages can easily be lost between different organisations or even different departments within the one public sector body. And as I said, if we're not looking at that whole picture, then this is the outcome, and we're going to be finding it very difficult to move away from our traditional barriers and challenges. So the principles of the Scottish approach to service design are very simple. They're very much linked to what I've talked about already about what is service design, but it is about keeping things as simple as they can be. It should be simple. Public service, so people accessing public services are usually accessing them for a reason that's probably not, it's causing them distress, or they're having an issue. It's not buying something off Amazon where you're buying a birthday gift or something like that. They're dealing with difficult issues very often. So it's about putting that user rather than organisational need as well. The organisational need needs to be met, but ultimately the service is for them. So we need to understand that end first and build it for them, so it solves the user's problems and their needs without just solving our own problems. Users in the team is a really important part, and that's that element of co-designing that process. So actually, it's not about a bunch of people stuck in a room designing a process for a citizen who's not even present in that conversation. The person who's going to be using that service should be there, should be in the team, should be designing that with you. There's various different ways of doing that. But it's essential that we have to keep coming back around to that and keep thinking, is this the right for the person that we're designing this for? It's about with the user rather than not just for them. Designing a service for a particular citizen is great, but we need to bring them into the conversation. No one left behind, so it should be about inclusive and accessible services, because there's a range of different people that we need to be delivering services. Even one service has to be delivered in different ways to ensure it's inclusive and accessible. And that's a key principle of the Scottish approach to service design. And always connects, it's that process of learning, understanding, making, testing, collaborating, sharing and reusing, because actually, across all of the councils in Scotland and all of the public sector bodies, we're often very much dealing with the same challenges. We're probably solving similar issues, working towards similar goals. And if we don't collaborate, share, reuse, then we're going to actually be duplicating our work. We're going to design things that are possibly in conflict with each other. And that's ultimately what the digital office is here to do for local government as well, is actually collaborate and share through a number of different projects. That's what they've been doing very successfully for the past few years, and we want to build on that. Another good way of explaining what we're aiming for with the Scottish approach to service design is this, which is featured in the Design for Public Good document by the Design Council, but it's this ladder of service design, if you like, which actually takes us from step one, which is designing for just a problem, so one-offs, discrete problems that are a problem for one particular organisation. Often design teams hired in to do this for the organisations. Stepping up to design as capability, so design becomes part of the culture. Skills of the employees are increasing to understand how they design. It's not just about somebody coming in and telling you what to do, but it's actually understanding how they can use design thinking themselves in the organisation. And the ultimate goal is design for policy. So actually, design is so ingrained into what we do that actually everything that all our policies and designs and legislation and things like that are designed with these design principles bought in. It's a whole system approach to designing services rather than step one, which is a discrete small scale projects that are looking at individual issues. It's about changing the culture entirely. And for those of you who are I've got some time afterwards or are interested in more, I've put some examples of when you've got the slides to look forward through at your leisure. You can have a look up some of these things. Some good examples of each step leading up to particular Helsinki Design Lab is a really fantastic example of how design is ingrained over a number of years. It's not happened overnight, but it's happened over a number of years. So we've gone from step one up to step three, and hasn't it design ingrained in their cultural thinking and policy making. So if you've got time, take a look at some of those things. Speaking of what looks good in the design for policy, is that Helsinki's a fantastic example. But what does good service design actually look like? Again, when you have time to have a look at these things yourself, have a look into some of these things more. But Snook are a service design agency that are based in Glasgow, and have been working with a number of different public sector organisations as well as other organisations to redesign their services. LiveWork is another great example, a research and design consultancy. Design for Europe and FutureGov as well have also been looking at ways to support innovation and change things at a local and national level for public services. So these are some good examples for you to have a look at when you've got some time. What is looking locally, more locally now, what does it look like in Scotland for Scottish angle? Some examples again. Open Change are another agency within Scotland who have worked quite closely with the public sector. They're actually really strong advocates of design for public policy and building capacity in service design, not just we'll come in and sort all your problems for you. They want to actually get to a stage where people can do this sort of thing for themselves. Hazel and Mike ran a course, a master's degree course on just that thing, sort of service design for policy. And I've worked with Dundee, they've worked with the NHS, they've worked with the Scottish Government and a number of third sector organisations and things like that to affect change, and are the sort of driving force behind the global service and gov jams that happen every year in Scotland. And I've also been working with the Scottish Service Design Academy, which is run by Dundee and Angus College as well. So they help develop that programme of work, which although you have to pay to access it, it's actually designed as capacity building professional development award program that actually people can kind of get into, design for professionals like ourselves who are wanting to build that capacity into their work. So a really good example of that. Mentioned the Scottish Government a few times, and they're definitely worth flagging up again. Kat Macaulay is actually the chief designer for the Scottish Government, based in the Scotland's Digital Directorate. She has got a whole team underneath her within the office of the chief designer, which consists of numerous service design designers within her team that are actually looking at a number of challenges that the Scottish Government are delivering, and are actually working in this method, within the Scottish Government, which I think is a really glowing recommendation for service design. And as I said, it's been something that other countries and other areas are actually quite envious of when I'm speaking to people from England, for example, who actually do not have this level of engagement with their central government on how to design services and have that support that we have within a small country like Scotland, where we've got quite a close-knit network and quite a supportive government there that is actually actively encouraging the work in this area. So really great champions of that, and if you've got an opportunity to hear Kat speak at anything, I can thoroughly recommend that. Not to blow my own trumpet, of course, but because this is being recorded, I feel I should throw Dundee City Council in there as well, so anybody who's watching offline and wants to get in touch and hear about what we've been doing. But we've been working with Open Change, with the Scottish Government, with the Dundee and Angus College, with the Digital Office over the past couple of years to really test and understand what service design is, what it can do, how can we build that capacity within organisations, and what benefit can it have. And from a few years ago, when we first started to play about with it, with explore it a little bit more, we've since introduced it to all of our leaders and got their buy-in to use it. And over the past couple of years, it's grown to the point that we're now using service design in all of our transformation projects. Just launched a new transformation program which runs through to 2022, and service design is being used as the vehicle to kick all of those projects off and to start all of them with the question on not how much are they going to save the organisation as the first question, but rather what problem are they solving, what good are these projects going to be doing for the citizen, for council plan, our city plan, for our city objectives over the next 10 years. So actually using service design to start these projects off with problem definition rather than jumping in its solution. So service design, if you Google service design tools or methods, you're going to come up with pages and pages and pages of different websites that will give you different tools and different methods to use. And this is just a couple of examples of things that you might find there, and we're definitely not going to go over them all in a half-an-hour webinar. But there is some fantastic tools out there, and that's kind of a lot of the purpose of the playbook, which I'll talk about in a minute, is about bringing these tools into one place, consistent approach and consistent look and feel, so you can engage with them. But you can see from some of the titles of them things like personas, role playing, storyboarding, mind mapping, tomorrow's headlines, rough prototyping, group sketching, things like that. The purpose of a lot of these tools is about questioning why it is that we do these things. How do people feel about them? What ideas have we got? Can we test them? Can we play around with them? Can we see if they're going to work? And very, very useful tools when it comes to starting projects in particular, to actually set you on the right path. Some of the ones that we use most often, things like interviews, journey maps, workshops. No service designer will ever hold a meeting. It's always a workshop, because we don't want to be talking at people. We need to be engaging people. Lots of post-it notes through brainstorming and visualization, storytelling, facilitating. It's a different way of approaching things to your traditional methodologies. And as I said, the Digital Office playbook aims to kind of gather that all together in one place. And that's one of the key outputs of the Digital Transformation Capabilities project. But it's not just about service design. The playbook is actually aiming to combine best practice when it comes to service design, agile, Lean Six Sigma, open innovation, benefits realization, because we recognise that actually the last thing we want to be doing is coming along and saying that any one of these methodologies are the one ruling and best way to deliver a project or to focus on a project, because that wouldn't be true. Every organisation has a different way of approaching things, there's a different preferred method, and actually each method has different reasons for being applied for different type of projects. So it's not about throwing anyone out over the other, it's actually about how they would complement each other. What benefits would people see from all of these pieces at different stages in the project, not just one versus the other. And ultimately the playbook is aimed at beginners and enthusiasts, not experts. Absolutely, people who are experts in any of these fields are welcome and encouraged to use it. But what we want to do is make it an inclusive tool, a tool that people can jump in and out of whenever they want, whenever they need it, depending on where they're at and depending on their skills and knowledge level. And they can be supported to actually engage with a lot of change and transformation methods, regardless of their kind of role or remit within an organisation. I mentioned before about obviously these things all fit together, and we don't want to throw any one out of the other. And this is an example, not a complete example of all the methods, but it's an example, a really good example about how design thinking or service design might fit with Lean, Six Sigma, and Agile development. And this is very much how that thinking is going to be framed. It's how thinking has been framed in other tools such as the ones that Dundee use. Actually, design thinking is really fantastic at understanding the problem, defining what that is, getting the insights, prototyping, going in a bit of a loop until you've kind of got a really clear idea of what you're doing. And then this continuous improvement piece of Lean, so check, plan, and do, and repeating that, and it is really great at building that solution. And Agile obviously is building the solution, and the Lean is continuously improving that. And at some point she will then go back to the start again and redesign the process if it's not working. But it's about how they all fit together rather than one versus the other, because actually they're all should be complementary if we're delivering them in the right way. The playbook itself will ultimately be designed so that we can kind of select the stage of your project, what stage you're at, and then it would be able to give you case studies of best practice, advice on how to apply various tools, but also which tools you might want to use at different stages. So it might be, you're at stage 2 of your project, you're doing this type of thing. Well, actually, you could use service design for this, Agile for this, Lean Six Sigma for this, and gives you a range of tools, methods, advice, who to ask, and who's been doing it particularly great over time. Because ultimately it should be an actual live working tool that gives you advice and information, which can be applied really to any organisation within Scotland. Ultimately, it links back to the same principles as the Scottish approach to service design. This the playbook that we're building with the digital office. This is actually about producing, co-designing the principles, the tools, the methods, building capacity across Scotland for all of these methods, and actually establishing an ability to sort of scale our learning and our collective efforts. It's all very much in line with what the Scottish Government is aiming to do with service design. We've just widened that out to not only include service design, but to include other methods as well. So this has been a fairly quick canter through some of the things that service design is and can do, and a little bit of information for you. What next, if you are keen to understand more? Well, you can certainly come and speak to the digital office. You can come speak to myself, or you can speak to any of the organisations listed throughout this that are particularly good at doing service design and have that knowledge. Another option is we have a range of different courses upcoming which are actually run by the Scottish Government, which is the Service Design Champions courses. The digital office have managed to secure, there was about 30 places or so across all the councils that could actually take this up as a sort of 3-day course, which will look at you know, service design, how we apply it, and run you through this in a lot more detail. I'll look at what is service design, what is user research, and you'll actually be able to get out and apply some of these things as well in the real world. We do have still places available if anybody's interested in taking them up. There's courses in Highlands and Islands, Dundee, South Scotland. There may well be some spaces left in the Edinburgh one, which is coming up. I'm not sure, we'll need to check that with the digital office, but if anybody is interested in taking up one of those places or nominating somebody from your organisation to take that up, if you're part of the digital office collaboration, and your council is part of that, then please get in touch with the digital office or myself, and we can try and arrange for you to go on that, because it's a really fantastic course that will give you a really good ground in how you can apply this in your own projects, but also within your organisation. I think that's me. Very interested to hear your questions or thoughts around service design, around what we've been talking about today. So yeah, I'll open that up to questions.
Thanks very much, Stephen. I'm sure you'll all agree that that was a great presentation. We have a few questions in, but if you do want to ask any questions, please use the chat box. And while we're waiting for a few more to come in, I would like to inform you that we are recording this, so it will be accessible on YouTube, which we'll share the link with you tomorrow, which can be accessed at a later date, and you can share with your colleagues. And just a note again about the 3-day service design course that Stephen has just talked about. There's a number of places left, so if you're interested, then please email info@digitaloffice.scot. There's one place per council. It's very limited, as they are free places that have been allocated by the Scottish Government, so they are going very quickly. So we'll just go straight into the questions, I think, Stephen, now.
Yeah.
The first one is, what was the initial investment and how much has been saved from this approach?
How much has been saved by this approach? I think it's a difficult question to answer from Dundee's perspective at this stage, because what we've been using so far has been doing that test of change piece over the past few years. So if you remember the ladder of service design implementation, where we had step 1, which was that kind of small innovations. We've done lots of those, and we've really understood how it fits within the council. And as I said, we've very recently had our transformation program signed off in July, so we're now starting the process of applying those to those projects. So this is the first time that we're scaling that up to a big scale, and then obviously we'll be generating a lot more savings through that, because they're applied to much bigger projects rather than kind of much smaller projects. So I think there will be plenty of examples of some of the bigger organisations that I've listed out throughout the presentation who have saved money through that. I would say that we're still a little bit early to say how much money we could have saved through that. Probably the most we've used it so far is in particular with our channel shift program, where we've actually applied the service design process to move in services from paper-based or old online services onto our new website platform. And we've kind of, every time we've done that, we've looked at the process, we've redesigned it from the customer's perspective. We've kind of designed out paper inefficiencies and pain points for the customer when we've been moving them onto our new website. And that has that's generated kind of rolling savings for our channel shift program in terms of the volume of people that are then moving online versus phoning in or coming in face to face. But I don't have the numbers of what we've saved in front of us at the moment, but I can certainly share that after if somebody's interested in knowing a bit more about that.
Fab, thank you. The next question, are there any courses online that can be accessed?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different free resources online which will and YouTube videos and things like that that will run you through examples of what service design is and what it can mean to you. The Service Design Academy, run by the Dundee and Angus College, is 4 modules, but you can do them online as well as face-to-face. In fact, if you start them online, I think you can also drop in at face-to-face occasionally if you can manage it, but you can do them online. Modules are on user research, co-design, tools and methods, and there's a project at the end. But that's a really kind of cost-effective way of kind of engaging at it from a beginner's perspective, and something I would recommend anybody to have a look at. If your budget is 0, then you will need to rely on some of the other tools and methods and YouTube videos and things like that are there. But I think the benefit of the service design training really comes when you can get involved with projects that actually involve user research and involve with groups of people that are delivering and applying the methods. So while you can get elements of it online, I think unless you're able to be part of the process, I think that's where the biggest benefit you'll see out of it is, and you'll really understand the benefits of the process better that way.
Yeah, so we can, in the follow-up email, we can add in some links in there as well for the attendees. That's great. I know you touched on this next one at our previous event, but how did you get your leadership team to embrace service design?
Yeah, I think we didn't give them an awful lot of choice. I think it was probably the best way. When we first started out looking at it, we actually got the chief executive was involved with some of the very early workshops that we ran. I think he was only able to attend 1 out of the 3 that we were running, but it was enough for him to sort of see, actually this is a really valuable tool, and can we do more of this? So what we then did, and you will no doubt it's within your councils have similar gatherings, but we twice a year the sort of leadership team, the wider leadership team, which is about 100 or so senior executives and directors, heads of service, things like that, come together to discuss certain things for a half day. But we managed to get a full day event looking at service design, and we brought in Open Change to facilitate that workshop initially. And throughout that day, we actually had them solving problems such as looking at issues like homelessness, attainment, education, drug misuse, things like that within Dundee. We had them even going out into the streets to talk to citizens about these issues, and ultimately across the whole day develop some very fast new ideas to solve the problems that they discussed throughout that day. And as a result of that day, we were able to then go out of the room with a lot of engagement and buy-in for the approach. So since then, whenever we've discussed it, using it, and the learning and organizational development team have actually picked up and trained their staff on it, and they've used it 2 or 3 times in their own projects, and are now using it on a really kind of weekly basis now for a number of challenges, alongside of the continuous improvement team that are embedding it with the transformation program. But whenever the conversation comes up to say this is the way we're going to be doing things, we don't get that question mark as to what is this, is it the right way, because they know the value of it. Even from one short 1-day workshop, there was unanimous support for it after that. So if you've got an opportunity to even to bring somebody in to explain the purposes and benefits of this, it's definitely a worthwhile process.
Great. There's another question in there about the champion training being available online. We are not aware of anything planned at the moment. Are you?
No, not at the moment. As usually the champion program is paid for. You have to pay for it, but we've actually been able to offer free places at this stage. Hopefully we'll be able to do more of that in the future, but at the moment we've got these limited spaces, so I would encourage you to take them up if possible. And even if you were able to send one person on the course that then can kind of take that back to the organisation and fill more gaps, then that would be useful. I think as the Service Design Academy by the Dundee and Angus College is also a good opportunity to be able to do that online if you want a more in-depth course, but nothing at the moment on Service Design Champions, although it is growing and changing. A few years ago it was only just for staff within the Scottish Government, and then start to widen it out and develop it as a full programme. So I would expect that to continue to change. So with any luck, that will be offered in other ways in the future.
Yeah, and we'll definitely share that information if we become aware of that. Next one, can you recommend where to look for more information on the user cases techniques? And do you have go-to tools that you consistently use that work well in different projects?
Yes, we do have, in fact, for go-to tools, we've actually started to create our own ones, just because they're then branded with the council logo and things like that, and they're also all black and white in the right sizes, so people can kind of print them off without having to think, oh, this is all in colour, I need it in a certain size. That they're actually just built in PowerPoint, so people can kind of take them, print them, and use them throughout the organisation. Those are the sort of tools that we'll end up putting into the playbook to share with other people, which is good. And I think we're looking at trying to get a kind of beta version of this out as soon as possible. We're trying to pull as much of it together across October, and then hopefully we'll be able to share something after that for testing for people to engage with and understand if that's working well. So yeah, that, and the first part of the question was, remind me, Siobhan.
Sorry, user cases techniques.
User cases and techniques. Yeah, I think some of the if you're looking for case studies, you know, some of the organisations that I've listed in the presentation are good places to start. From a local government perspective, we will include those within the playbook, and we'll try and also include some Scottish Government examples, because they've got some really good case studies as well. So I think they would be useful to build into the playbook so people can see that as well. Yeah, and toolkits and techniques, there's a little bit of a collection of them that we've kind of put together. We've tried some things that work and don't work, but DIY toolkit is a good one that we use quite a lot, and there's quite a few things. I think the Service Design Academy, you're able to, with the college, you're able to get quite a lot of tools and methods from there, and Open Change certainly have some tools available for free online. So these are some good places to start. But as I said, for aims of building a consistent approach through the playbook and through the Scottish approach, there will be, these things will be coming up soon in the playbook that actually say these are the tools that we would recommend you use, and this is case studies and how we've used them, and this is how to use them in best practice and what you're going to need and things like that. So certainly when we've got that out, that'll give a sort of one-stop shop for a lot of these things. Perfect.
Next one, when you're implementing something, especially in a greenfield project, it works well, but how do you implement service design in councils that have always done a service in a certain way? So for instance, bin collections.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we're applying service design to is in services where that is the way things have always been done. I think what you need to do is try and push through that and say, look, this is the way that it's going to be done. Let's have a workshop, a kick-off workshop that will explain to you what this is, and we're going to really kind of have a conversation and a discussion about it. You will face negativity, you will face questions, you will face a bit of skepticism, but I can guarantee by the end time you finish that first workshop, there will be a lot more understanding of what that process is going to be, and what benefits it can bring. In some cases, we've used it. I've had people using the techniques at stages in project where we're working with a whole range of different people, and they've got to the point that nobody's speaking to anybody and they're at stalemate, and they've used things like brainwriting techniques, which is just like brainstorming but quietly, and you're writing them down rather than talking, and then you're mapping them onto the walls and you're voting on ideas and things like that. That actually gets people talking, gets people away from arguing, and gets everybody's voice heard, and they've used that to unstick projects and move them forward. I use some of the methods for engagement with trade unions when discussing our transformation programme. You know, and it would be fair to say that they were expecting me to come along and present to them for an hour on what the transformation programme was going to be, and they were slightly confused when I'm sitting there saying, right, no, let's have a conversation, let's discuss it, let's map out what it is that you want, what the people that you're representing want out of transformation from the council, and they were very sceptical initially and struggled to see the purpose of this way instead of listening to me talking to them. But actually at the end of that period, we got a lot of good insights from them. Actually what they were looking for was very much what the council was looking to deliver as well, and it became a very open discussion and clear discussion about what we actually wanted out of it, rather than just me talking and them questioning me on it, I feel like. So I think the overall, just the best way to do it is get started, try it, and sort of jump in feet first, because it will take people by surprise a little bit. It will take a little bit of adjusting, but I think almost unanimously people will engage with this way of working, because it's a very simple and easy way to engage, and it does encourage conversation and open and honest conversations that aren't criticised or shot down or anything like that. So I would recommend just to try it and see.
There definitely is a few questions that have been sent in about how to get users engaged, and what sort of ways are you going out and getting users to give you that feedback, because I know that'll be a struggle.
Yeah, I think even when we've been trying to figure out how we apply service design best over the past couple of years, there's still a cultural drawback to our traditional methods of engaging with citizens, or even engaging with the users of services internally, is to you know, have a meeting with them, or to, you know, send out a survey and ask them some questions. And while surveys, for example, are useful pieces of data sometimes, actually, but the service design principles tell you is actually five detailed conversations about somebody's experience is far more valuable than, you know, 100 survey answers, which are going to have a lot of repetition and won't get you the detail of actually what that service experience was. So in terms of engagement, I think it is just about kind of being open and clear, and I think the service design helps to do that as well. A lot of what we've done with transformation projects in the past has been behind closed doors. Again, we haven't communicated often enough with even our staff or our citizens as to what's being done and what the benefits are for people. What we're actively trying to do now is whenever something happens or changes, we communicate it with them, we get it out there, we put it on the intranet, we put it on the website, we tell them what's going on. And as we're talking about engagement in projects, you know, we've been actively asking that question: who needs to be around that table, who needs to be at that workshop when we're discussing this? Is it you know, children and families, education, you know, city development, things like that? But actually, do we need to be getting the third sector in here? Do we need a parent representative? Do we need, you know, service users in here as well to ask the questions? It's not just about the usual suspects around the table. It's actually remembering that and circling back and going, actually, can we do this a little bit differently? Are there groups within the council that already engage with citizens? Because there's numerous different people that already engage with citizens. We have community centres, we have engagement groups, we have consultations all the time. So actually, can we tap into some of these existing groups to ask these questions? It doesn't always have to be you know, behind closed doors and meeting rooms. We can use what we've already got. It's not easy. It's a change of mindset, and it's something you actually have to actively kind of question a lot and circle back to. But I think that's part of the culture change. If we keep doing that often enough, then people will remember and keep doing that.
Great. I've got conscious of time, and we have got quite a lot of questions still remain unanswered. So if your question's not answered, we will follow up with an email. But to end it on a positive note, would you be able to give us an example of a service that you have transformed using service design?
Yeah, a good example that I can also send out a video to it as well, which will explain it a little bit afterwards in the email. There's quite a good video that goes with it. But we've used the service design techniques when we're looking at the young people in the workforce last year. we were asking the question about how do we encourage modern apprentices and graduates, and how do we to apply to the council, but also how do we keep them there? How do we learn from the young workforce? How do we build a workforce that is suitable for our young people? But rather than, again, assuming the problem or assuming the solution, we set up a range of different workshops that actually got a range of different people from across the council, managers and service delivery individuals from different fields, but also invited the modern apprentices and graduates and things like that into the conversation as well. So every table had a modern apprentice or two sitting at it. So we had people who were, you know, ground layer modern apprentices that were sitting next to our chief exec and telling his story about what it's like coming into the council and what it's like, you know, being on fixed term contracts and how difficult that can be and some of the challenges around it and not knowing people of a similar age, etc. So actually what we were able to produce out of that, those few days of workshops, was a really interesting list of different priorities and options and solutions to solve a lot of those problems that came out of there, to actually directly solve some of the problems that were identified, and we've been able to apply those. A good example is then taken out of that was our graduate programme, which we ran last year and took on 15 or so graduates. But the whole programme was designed around, you know, giving them project skills, giving them skills across a range of people and organisations. They were given a lot of autonomy and a lot of opportunities to learn and engage and develop, which actually we often missed out on a lot of times because there wasn't clear remits as to what we were going to do with these graduates. And a lot of them have actually then since stayed within the council and continued their employment with us. That's just one example. There's a whole range of other things that were implemented as a result of that. But I think it's a powerful reminder of actually bringing the person who you're designing the service for back into that conversation. And as I'll share the video with you afterwards, which has a couple of interviews with some of the people involved, so it's an interesting one. But yeah, there's other examples, but I can share some more things offline, conscious of time.
That's perfect. I'm sure we've got quite a lot of stuff to include in that email. So yep, we're bang on the hour mark now, and yep, there's a few questions still unanswered, but we will be in touch via email in the coming days to respond to any other questions that are unanswered. So yeah, I think we'll wrap up here, and if you've got any further questions in the coming weeks, months, please do feel free to email info@digitaloffice.scot, and the digital office or Stephen will respond to you on service design. And we will be sharing information about future events and webinars to everyone who's attended today. So yep, thank you very much, Stephen, and thank you to everyone who's attended. It's been a massive list of people in today and a great response with loads of questions. So that's fab. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Great, thank you.
See you all later.